What's up, guys? How's it going?
What's going on?
Pretty good. What's going on?
Cool. We got a little bit of a different platform this time we're going to try out. So we'll see how this goes. It'll be hopefully a little bit smoother, a little bit more interactive, and, get to, I guess we're going to be on screen a little bit more. Presenting should be a little bit easier. So we'll see how this goes. And we're actually live. We're actually streaming live right now. So big experiment this time. We'll see how it goes. Well, let's kick things off. We're in a pretty weird time. The price of Bitcoin is at levels that are kind of confusing for a lot of people. You have a lot of FUD continuing to surface from headlines and conversations around different communities. And you have more and more conversation about regulation. That came up a little bit this week. Everybody's kind of jumping in with their opinion. We're coming off of a pretty eventful weekend in Miami, Bitcoin conference. Miami just popping off this summer, literally and figuratively. And I think the Mayweather fight wasn't that there as well. So a lot of stuff coming off of this weekend. Where are we when it comes to crypto markets? Where are we with the price of Bitcoin, the price of other alts? June 10th. We're kind of smack dab in the middle of summer here. So what's the crypto environment looking like, guys?
It's an interesting landscape right now. You kind of touched on a couple things. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this month shakes out. You've got half the world of Bitcoin, which is China. Arguably they control the majority of the hash rate. They've got the majority of the coins. And right now they're being cracked down hard by their government. They're like during the dry season, the mining in certain areas of China is so much larger that like the environmental impact and offset is just terrible. And so not only are China cracking down on mining, and all of these big Bitcoin miners are being forced to uproot their homes. They're being forced to leave China. Like they're all like on trips right now in South America, trying to find new sites to move their Bitcoin mines and their lives to. And I was kind of listening to some of the Up Only podcast this morning with Kyle Davies from Three Arrows, and he was talking about how literally like all the people that he talks to in China are so much more bearish than anyone that you talk to on the Western Hemisphere, because their lives are literally being uprooted right now. Not only the mining ban, but Baidu, which is like how so many people like go and access crypto exchanges, like how they access the internet. It's like their Google, right? It's like Baidu's blocking keywords. So the Chinese people can't access cryptocurrency exchanges right now. They can't access Huobi, OKX, Binance. And so on that side of the world right now, it is like the sky is falling for crypto. Whereas over here on our side of the world, we have El Salvador dropping their national currency and picking up Bitcoin as a national currency and saying that they were going to harness the power of their volcano to mine Bitcoin. You've got Basel, Switzerland, the committee on, I believe it's the Basel Committee on Bank Supervision. They have decided that it is now okay for banks to hold Bitcoin, crypto and cryptocurrencies. They just have to have 12.5 times the amount of cash on hand to offset the amount of Bitcoin that they hold. And this is the news that like kind of snuck by the Basel with allowing banks to start holding Bitcoin. Like that's huge. And stable coins fall outside of this regulation. So that means that banks are going to be able to hold stable coins, meaning that they are soon going to be able to start yield farming. And so on this side of the world, there's just so much just like positive. And so it's going to be interesting to see like what happens.
Why do you think, Tyler, that China is doing this? Because I'm a little torn. First of all, it's like they're doing it to their citizens, right? Preventing cryptocurrency from being something that their citizens participate in. I would attribute that to maybe kind of forcing them to adopt a centralized Chinese cryptocurrency. Maybe that's oversimplified, but they're also hurting their industry. It's arguable that the Bitcoin mining operations of China have really had the edge for the last years, and particularly when it comes to their ability to mine Bitcoin with energy in mind, right? The hydropower dams and the very particular large operations that moved to China in the last decade. And there's been a push, obviously, to move a lot of that hash power back here. I've mentioned some of the concerns I have about the risk of most of that hash power being tied to Chinese national, associated machines. So why? I guess I can't fully understand why.
I'll tell you why.
Would hurt themselves, hurt their own.
Okay. Industry. So here's the thing, right? Is that like before there was Bitcoin, there was the US dollar, right? And then after the BRICS was formed after Bitcoin, I believe. Could be wrong on that. Could have been formed right before, but I believe it was formed after. And the Chinese have got a major stake in Bitcoin, right? Every Bitcoin mining company, every exchange, every Bitcoin major company in China has Chinese Communist Party ties and has a CCP member on their board. So China's got Bitcoin. There's already been how much percent of the supply produced, right? Like China's good. They're good on the Bitcoin front, right? So now the battle is not like controlling the hash power because like it's still going to be Chinese companies controlling the hash power. They're just not going to be in China. They're still going to have a CCP party member on their board. They're just not going to be in China. So in my opinion, I'm not saying that China created Bitcoin, but I think China saw Bitcoin as a vessel to destabilize the US dollar. You give people three options: the BRICS currency, the dollar, or Bitcoin. You may not want to dump your dollar for the BRICS currency, but you can dump it for Bitcoin. But who's got the power to bring Bitcoin to its knees? Satoshi and China. The US could hurt it, but like Satoshi and China could actually like take it to zero.
So are they just flexing right now? Are these kind of like?
I think they're trying to spread out. I think they're trying to gain global adoption. I think they're trying to show, hey, we want this Bitcoin thing to be fair. Even though we already have so much of it, we want it to be fair. We want everybody to have say. We want the hash power to be spread out. We want it to be green energy. We want it to be we want it to be carbon offset. We want it to be adopted. But we don't necessarily want all the Chinese people to go all into Bitcoin. We want them because the Chinese currency is about to start gaining traction as well. So if you just held the Chinese currency, you're going to be fine. Like you're going to be fine too. Like all these other countries are divesting of the US dollar. They're going to start investing in the Chinese assets, Chinese stock market, Chinese. So it's like, you don't necessarily want your people, like you want people to dump the dollar, but you don't want them to dump your currency.
Ro, are we still printing money?
Yeah, we're still printing money.
What's the update looking like in terms of the health of the dollar and changes that you're seeing there?
Yeah, we're still just right in that range. One thing I didn't mention last time is like, just because we're kind of hovering at the 90 mark doesn't mean we can it means we can keep hovering at the 90 area mark as well. So, I was just looking at it and, we can hover in this range from like 88 to 92, 93, somewhere around those for months. And so I actually probably anticipate that happening as we go into the summer months. One thing I was thinking, and just like talking through relatively recently, was just like in Europe here, people take months off for summer, and like everybody takes like a month or two off at a time, and I think that actually like drastically impacts markets in general. And so, you know, if people are on vacation, they're not managing their funds, they're not trading, they're not, you know, doing what they typically do. And so, and you know, volume dries up quite a bit. And so, given how much money Europe has, like history, it's not as much as America, but you know, it's still significant. You know, it definitely drives markets, specifically London. Um, yeah, I think we could definitely consolidate here, and that's kind of what I would use to describe the market right now. Um, I I think Tyler nailed it on the head. You know, I was listening to that same podcast or that same Twitch stream right before the call, and Kyle was just like, yeah, um, China is bearish right now, and that is something you have to like really, really pay attention to, and you can't take that lightly. But at the same time, we're seeing all of this incredible adoption. You know, like when El Salvador announced Bitcoin is legal tender, this is going to sound stupid maybe, but it was like a pretty emotional moment for me because, like, you know, that was the dream 5 years ago. You know, like that was like a huge moment, and it was also the guy who delivered the speech. You know, like it was a pretty pivotal moment in Bitcoin's history. So that was really, really cool to see. But I've been doing like other research as well. And I'm pretty convinced now, and I can change my opinion, but I definitely have some thoughts that like, especially like coming after the conference, the Bitcoin conference in Miami, and how, not all of it, I'm sure, but like how over the top it was, and like just ridiculous it was. I don't think Bitcoin is going to be around for forever, for like by like within the next 20 years. I'm not going to say it's going to go to zero just because it's a blockchain. It's the first one. It's, you know, MySpace is still around, but I have a lot of concerns because the community is just very resistant to change. And even though it's the first and it paved the way and all these other things, I just don't see it adapting to the level of competition that it's about to face. You know, and that's like saying this after we have Latin America on the verge of adopting it as like their global standards. And I don't think it's going to go away necessarily, but I think there's going to like come a time where a lot more currencies will overtake it and do what it does better.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's but you opened up the can of worms of Miami. So let's get into that. You said the conference, the Bitcoin conference this year was over the top. It was. I mean, it's really, none of us went there. I'll just throw that out there. Like whatever we read about it or saw about it or live stream, you know, jumped in live streams or, you know, the forums that we're in and just kind of getting the information that came out of it. Man, there was a lot. There's probably a lot for us to decipher through, but yeah, it was definitely a interesting conference. There was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm and, you know, maximalism, if you will. You know, the fuck Elon guy that came up there, you know, just the Kevin O'Leary talking about Bitcoin as if he's, you know, been a staunch supporter of it since the very beginning. It was silly. So in so many different ways, I didn't see what Tom Brady said or anything like that, but yeah, I mean, and then you touched on El Salvador. I mean, that are we near a top that's kind of like the thing, or I mean, a top, and just not in price necessarily, but just in terms of market adoption psychology. What are the biggest takeaways of the conference?
So one of the things that I heard said was to get money, to attract money, you have to spend money. And that's what Sam, like, it was a Bitcoin conference, but Sam spent the money needed to be spent to show the rest of the world, hey, we don't just need your money. Like, we're spending it too. That on top of Russell Okung, I don't really think it was good taste what he did. But like, I think the message that the Bitcoin community is sending to Elon of like, we don't want your money. Like, I think that's like that gives me chills. Like, just the thought of like telling one of the richest men in the world, like, we literally don't want your money. Like, it would be better if you didn't put it in, and that's really cool. But the money was spent to show the guys who raised the money from the people who have real money a really good time. Like, Diplo played for like 100 people, like Marshmallow played for a couple hundred people. Tiesto played for a couple hundred people. There were yachts everywhere. Like, everybody had a amazing time. And, the euphoria is kind of top things, but the ripple effects, I could think we're going to have a double bubble. It's like, we got to have a double bubble.
Yeah, and let me clarify, like, that's not to say I'm bearish on Bitcoin in the short to intermediate term. I think Bitcoin is here, like, for sure until 2030. Like, I don't think, like, for the next 10 years, I would say, like, Bitcoin is going to be pivotal to the ecosystem at large. With these countries, like, let's say Argentina and Venezuela and all these other countries start adopting Bitcoin as their global standard, which I think is very likely. That's incredibly bullish, and that makes Bitcoin a reserve asset. But at the same time, if/once a currency flips it, like if F flips Bitcoin, game on, because then it's just been proven like that something else can flip Bitcoin. And I think, the infrastructure that South America and Latin America will build for crypto will do wonders for the entire industry. And it's kind of like this necessary, it's absolutely necessary for the system to grow. But yeah, I do think, like, in terms of utility and just functionality, like, Bitcoin's not going to change off of proof of work. It's never going to change off of proof of work. It's not going to change their small block sizes. Lightning took forever to come to the network, and that happened 4 years ago. There hasn't been like an upgrade since. And then you have Ethereum doing everything it's doing. You have all these Solana doing everything that it's doing. You have just so much competition coming to take up that #1 spot, and doing things that Bitcoin will never do. It will never be private. It will never have a smart contract platform. Like, there's just too much. Bitcoin as a financial system right now isn't sufficient. Like, the current traditional finance system is more functional than Bitcoin alone. But I think if you combine all of crypto, maybe not exactly right now, but hopefully in the future, traditional finance shouldn't have a chance.
Well, I would go as far as to say right now, even it's like that. I mean, you have the makings, the bare bones of everything that exists in current financial systems rebuilt on blockchain with a multi-chain world in mind. And it's not perfect. It's not completely functional. It's not complete, but you have the bricks for everything that exists. And you also have prototypes and experiments going on for things that don't exist. And that's really the promise and the potential. And those things are going to be more shady or more risky or more unproven or experimental or, kind of that new frontier and truly a wild west because there's no model for that before. But whereas people hop to exchanges, Bitcoin exchanges or crypto exchanges, well, you're familiar with how exchanges work because you trade stocks or you have these systems in centralized fashions. So I would even say that we as a economy are rebuilding the centralized current financial system. All of the components that currently exist, whether they're insurance or reinsurance or financial products bundled together or liquidity opportunities or leveraged securities, all of that exists already. The whole easy part of that was let's rebuild on a better platform what we all already have built. But there's new promise and opportunity that comes with this new system. And that's kind of the whole thing is we will figure out as we build stuff and as we kind of open up new possibilities of, hey, let's build this thing. Like you can do that here. And then kind of looking at, well, why didn't we build that before? Well, either we did and there's a big, big problem with it. That's the more risky stuff. Or we didn't because we couldn't, because it wasn't a feature. It wasn't a function. There was a conversation I was having with somebody about Doge and just the differences between an unlimited supply, a theoretical unlimited supply of dollars that can be continued to be printed, or an unlimited supply of Doge, which is technically how it is. I mean, you can continue to produce more Doge. It doesn't have a cap. But one is programmed on a blockchain and one is up to a bunch of white hairs that sit around a table and turn the machine on. One is calculable and one is at the mercy of the way that the world shakes out. And so I think that fundamental difference in itself means that, well, if you're going to build a dollar or a currency for everybody, right? If you're going to have something widely available that circulates, that can be used from person to person or person to merchant or business to business or anything like that, what's the difference with that one feature in mind? It's a psychological feature, knowing that it cannot be manipulated in a way that goes beyond the pre-programmed allowable manipulation, right? There's always some level of working with it.
One thing I do want to mention there is, if you compare 2008, 2009 to like the Great Depression, 1929, 2008, 2009 was probably the beginning of when we started printing money. Quantitative easing became a thing and we never stopped. And while the promise of cryptocurrency, specifically hard cap cryptos are, nothing will ever be manipulated. But you could philosophically argue that for maybe not everybody, but for at least the majority of Americans, quantitative easing helped that, significantly helped reduce the blow of what could have potentially happened. And so it was really nice to have a government actor print all of this money. In some ways, maybe they've gone too far. It's become a little bit excessive. Those are all arguments for and against. But just imagine the swings that crypto has. Bitcoin, even Bitcoin, topping out at $20,000 in 2017, going down to sub $3,000, around $3,000 in 2020. Imagine that on a global scale, and things aren't looking as nice anymore. And so yeah, I think as it matures, there's going to be a lot less volatility, certainly. But I think that it's just an interesting point that I do want to get you guys' thoughts on, because having this government actor to kind of come in and save the day definitely isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah. We love crypto and the concept of decentralization and let the computers run the show. But there would be a situation potentially, as we've seen, maybe it plays out differently when we're relying on systems with this certain psychological component in mind, that there is nobody to save us, that we would act differently, as a herd, for the betterment of the herd. But, who knows, because in our history, we tend to get ourselves as humans in trouble, and then we need a leader to get us out of it. So that is kind of the way that things have unfolded, throughout our centralized society so far. I do want to jump ship real quick, talk a little bit about El Salvador. I mean, this is really like, don't start crying on us, Ro. But let's jump in just a little bit. It really is the dream, right? Like this, like you think about it, like a country on the other side of the world, without the benefit of a strong government currency, is adopting, and it's not just a shit country either, right? I know somebody from there, right?
Well, let's be fair. Let's be fair. Here's what they did. A lot of good people from El Salvador fled El Salvador to come to the United States. And they said, if you're going to take our good people, we're going to take your rich crypto people. And if you have 3 Bitcoin, we'll give you citizenship.
That's crazy. I mean, I saw that 3 Bitcoin. If you invest
I don't
3
think
Bitcoin,
it's citizenship. I think it is
Residency?
permanent residence, which is different.
Are you
Okay.
sure?
Like I saw permanent residence, and because if you're a citizen,
saw something
you
in Telegram, so it was just like somebody typed. So there's probably not legit. You're probably right.
I don't think it's citizenship. That'd be wild.
But residency still, like, I mean, come on, that's what I mean. Like, what's to prevent somebody from going? And because I believe it's not give the Salvadorian government 3 Bitcoin. I believe it's, what I read was invest 3 Bitcoin into the El Salvadorian economy. I don't know what qualifies, but like you could essentially buy a house, right? I think that's what they're trying to get you to do, is essentially buy a house and you have residency. And then all of a sudden you're a resident.
Or you buy a resident or a restaurant. It's like, I saw a lot of those for sale that were like ready to go restaurant with condo on top. Like,
I ain't trying to run a restaurant if I move to El Salvador. I'm trying to kick it.
But like, think about that though, right? Like, so you've got Bitcoin, you move over there, you got 5 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin, whatever. Bitcoin's at whatever price it's at now. It runs to $1 million over the course of like so many months, years, and you actually lost a half of a Bitcoin. Like, you got a loss. Like, doesn't matter the US dollar, like you on taxes, you're at a loss. Like, you lost Bitcoin, so you have a capital loss. Like, that's so amazing.
What's the next country to jump on and be like, we'll give you residency for 2 Bitcoin? What's the next one?
I think Paraguay is trying to.
So I saw this, I should have researched it more before the call, but I saw this on some Twitter thread. One of the consequences of El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as a legal tender, making it one of their currencies, means that you no longer have to pay capital gains tax when you transfer spot Bitcoin to US dollar, because you don't have to pay taxes when you go from the euro to the dollar. You don't have to pay taxes when you go from the pound to the euro. So the fact that El Salvador's national currency is Bitcoin, you don't have to pay taxes anymore, which I think is massive. You can basically trade Bitcoin without paying taxes, I believe now. Have you guys seen anything on that?
Oh, you're on mute. What did you say, Tyler?
I think I saw the same Twitter thread, but I didn't really look into it either.
Yeah, this is big. The different treatment. It's like basically it's like move your money over here, and Will threw it up a minute ago, but what that article said was permanent residency. Permanent residency. So I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But yeah, the fact that it operates like a currency changes everything because whether or not it's the national currency for you to be able to transact with it, you're going to begin to see merchants that set up business, particularly to take advantage of people who have Bitcoin that they're wanting to spend and work with. So it kind of reminds me of when I think it was under the Obama administration when we opened up tourism back to Cuba, and a bunch of Cuban businesses set up shop, like young entrepreneurs, to get ready for that change in policy, to be prepared for a large amount of United States dollars coming over. And that really did change the game for a lot of individuals and a lot of people. So I would imagine something similar in El Salvador where, if you own a little fruit stand somewhere, you start earning Bitcoin or start accepting Bitcoin, like that could be a game changer for you, because all of a sudden you're going to have people coming in with a bunch of Bitcoin and appreciating what you're doing and loving where they are. And that could be huge.
Well, Jack Mallers with Strike, who he's, developing on the Lightning Network, is the one that got all this started. And so he's kind of been on Twitter, like, if anybody else wants to, like, hit me up. And so Colombia's president-elect has been hitting Jack Mallers up. And so it's like, Jack Mallers needs to be careful because, like, he's turning into the guy that goes and helps countries get set up on Bitcoin. Like, but
yeah.
There's a lot at stake there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Last thing on El Salvador. Come on. Is the volcano powered mining thing is that real?
Yeah, 100%. It's like the same in Iceland.
Okay. Let's talk about that. What do you know?
I mean, it's just like geothermal heat underneath the ground, maybe probably several hundred meters to several thousand meters under the ground. It's really just this energy source or like heat that they can use to power shit, and 100% a real thing. Everything will smell like sulfur, but who cares? You're mining Bitcoin.
All right. So basically, from a very, very simple physics, how heat-based engines work is you're essentially capturing heat in a container, which creates pressure. That pressure expands through a kind of contraption that you have that pushes a force that essentially that's the energy, right? So heat turns into expanded air, which turns into pressure. That pressure pushes something that turns, that's how that energy comes from. So if you essentially have geothermal, you have an unlimited and reliably linear source of, like, it's not going to fluctuate in heat. It's a fucking volcano. So, it's just going to be continuously putting off heat. Think about hydropowered, the dams in China, right? They had so much force of water flowing down a preset valley. All this water was going down. You basically just set up dams to have something propel. You capture your energy there. So, this whole concept of Bitcoin mining, supporting this global monetary system, this network, and then tapping into renewable energy, I think that this is a really, really big push. And if this volcano thing is for real, I don't think that we've done it with volcanoes before. I know geothermal capture is a thing, but this is a volcano. Could this be like kind of like a catalyst for environmental pushes towards this whole thing? I mean, is Bitcoin truly going to be the green like energy monetary machine that is well suited for these remote regions of the world that have these natural resources? I mean, is that kind of like, because if they can do this, everybody's going to be thinking about what they can do and how they can do it and how they can attract people.
Well, CZ sent out 2 tweets this morning. One was, anyone buying Volcano yet? Until 2 days ago, it just didn't cross my mind that hashtag crypto will provide the monetization model for volcanoes, comma 2. Must admit, my imagination is too limited to predict the future of hashtag crypto, but I know it's going to be big. Not financial advice. 10 minutes later, contrary to popular misconceptions, hashtag Bitcoin will incentivize / fund a new era of clean energy research and development and helps further advance our civilization.
It's still not proof of stake. You know, it's still significantly more energy intensive.
Proof of stake's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, look, I mean, okay.
All of it is.
Proof of stake has its purpose, I think. Proof of work also has its purpose. I think that for good reason, Bitcoin should stay proof of work. I think any deviation from that would kind of undermine that pinning of the crypto financial system.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, proof of work to me is kind of like, okay, as long as proof of work works, proof of stake can function on top of that, like as a part of the ecosystem. And you do need certain things, like there's a certain amount of like OG comfort that comes in with proof of work. Oh, you got hardware? Okay. You know, like the Ponzi side of proof of stake is, okay, you're talking about, all right, well, stakeholders. We're gonna depend on our stakeholders to continue to be stakeholders, because anybody who has a certain amount of an ecosystem is going to inherently be a somebody who wants it to succeed, and therefore not going to hurt themselves and hurt the larger ecosystem at hand. That holds value, except when proof of work fails, right? If proof of work fails, if something else collapses, if all the whole system gets kind of thrown out of whack, then you have to really reconsider the assumption of people's loyalties. Just because they hold a bunch of coin in an ecosystem that they've accumulated, during a simple, basic, orderly proof of work, proof of stake type of ecosystem, you can depend on the fact that those large proof of stake wallets, the ones that really support the stability of that coin or that blockchain, they are going to be good actors. But when everybody in a chaotic situation where everybody's running for the hills, you also got to think like maybe those big proof of stake actors for that particular coin, maybe they're looking to get out too. And at some point, we've all studied game theory. At some point, you break the rules, you break your agreement. At some point, that's a risk. And proof of stake based coins are very much at risk from a house of cards toppling if there's a run. If you can have crazy changes in stability of the network through people changing their mind on where they want their money to be. It's also something to assume that large stakeholders in a particular chain would also potentially be affiliated with or be those same large stakeholders in other chains. That's kind of the world that we operate in. Whereas a proof of work type system, to get a run to the same degree, a house of cards toppling, you would have to have a 51% attack. You would have to have some sort of double spend or some sort of core technical error that jeopardized the whole system. But that in itself would still send proof of stake people running around with their, like chickens with their heads cut off. So in good times, proof of stake is much more efficient. In bad times, proof of stake could potentially be very, very unstable. You lose the faith of your top generals, you have no army.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make some points. In the instance of like the top general liquidating his shares, that all of those coins go to another party, and for every buyer there's a seller, for every seller there's a buyer. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know the underlying technology enough to really comment on the specifics of it. But I think in terms of security and energy efficiency, maybe I will give the nod to proof of work for security. But I don't think I think it's relatively marginal. You know, I don't think it's because it's the whole premise of you know, proof of anything is you put in the resources, maybe not proof of anything, but you put in the resources to protect yourself, right? If you are mining Bitcoin, you buy the hardware to mine Bitcoin and the electricity. If you are staking Ethereum, you are purchasing large amounts of Ethereum with the intention to stake it. And I don't know about the locks, like how long it takes to unlock your staking. I'm not specific, but there are various mechanisms that people can do to ensure good actors in the whole staking ecosystem.
Yeah, you did bring up a good point. There are programmed features to mitigate instability, lockup periods, you know, just the general incentives that are built into the model of, hey, you will be rewarded for supporting the system and, you know, locking up supply. Just all of the features, they are directed to that. I just think as we move forward, it's just a vulnerability for us to kind of consider, is that we haven't really seen a proof of stake reliant crypto environment, right? Like, so up until this point, it's mostly been proof of work in the history of things. And now we're moving to where people are like, oh, that's such a waste of energy. We can do the same thing or even better with proof of stake. Cool. But what does a proof of stake dominant crypto market look like in a 2 to 3 year bear market? You know, that could be something that, you know, the whole saying about markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. What about those stakeholders that are watching their large stakes go down? At some point you may trim. At some point you may decide, hey, I want this free. I'm gonna hold it. It may change hands. I may sell it, but I was before holding a 2%, you know, 2% of the supply or 1% of the supply, and I was staking that. Now that is no longer being staked because of the uncertainty of the price, because we've got a bear market and everybody anticipates that. It's like, why would I continue to hold on to something that's deflating? You will potentially have a lot of large people pull off their stakes, which, you know, maybe not changing the price of the coin, but the stability of the system, you know, increasing circulation potentially. Maybe that's a good thing overall. But I just think that there's a little bit more of a vulnerability to consider in tumultuous times if you have a lot of coins that are majority proof of stake. It's not hard for that whole bubble to burst compared to proof of work, where people have invested in hardware, which lasts 2 to 3 years. So, but that kind of gets me thinking, what about Grayscale? They've been in the news a little bit. What do you guys know about Grayscale and what's going on there?
What are you specifically referring to?
So, I mean, are they still increasing in size? I mean, they've been accumulating Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. I was just looking at BYBT. I found it today or yesterday, and it's just kind of this interesting kind of graphic of all of their holdings and what the movement on them is. I think and I don't understand the exact dynamics of this because those are trusts. They don't, theoretically, you can't actually sell anything from it. Like, you can't claim Zcash or ETH from it. It's just like you can only invest. It's one-sided. It's a closed-end fund, and so I don't know exactly why there would be a net decrease, but I anticipate it's because there's a 2% management fee, that occur from this every year. And so I anticipate that's why there's probably some natural selling pressure for all of these holdings. However, it is really interesting to see what they are accumulating, assuming all of this data is accurate. And it looks like Litecoin, Zcash, and Link are all kind of being accumulated by a large degree. There's some others down there as well that they're, I think, establishing a fund for, but relatively small. But Link is also a very small position for them. So it was just kind of interesting to find, and I figured I'd pass this along to you. It's definitely something I'm going to be keeping track of going forward. But yeah, look at that Litecoin premium. It's just, what is that? I don't know how to, like, what does that mean? You know, like, why are people buying? Why is the premium so high on Litecoin relative to?
I don't know, but I was listening to a community chat the other day, Ro, and the guy was talking about how he needed to sell his helium to get cash to buy more helium, and so he was saying that the best path that he could find is helium to Binance to Litecoin, or helium to Litecoin, because sending Tether, sending Bitcoin Cash, sending, like, the fee was so much higher for him to send anything else than for him to send Litecoin to Coinbase. He said it cost him like 15 cents to send,
I've transacted
to send his Litecoin to Coinbase, and then he went from Litecoin to Cash, and then he cashed out.
I've done that several times on Coinbase, as opposed to sending Bitcoin. Just convert it to Litecoin and send it, and it gets there within a fraction.
If it's fast, if it's cheap, and they've got Mimblewimble, then maybe Litecoin's a viable, like, maybe it's a viable option.
Grayscale. And it's been around. It's an OG, but yeah.
Yeah, Grayscale is also the official crypto sponsor now of the New York Giants. So you've got FTX Arena, and you've got Grayscale. Grayscale, not Blockfolio, but Grayscale as the official.
Litecoin's the sponsor of the Dolphins.
Okay. I didn't know that. I think
Litecoin's the official currency of, like, the Miami Dolphins or something like that.
All right. So then we need Dogecoin to sponsor what? Some ice hockey team.
Yeah.
This is a mainstream, like, this is we know how sponsorships work, naming rights. They're not doing anything. They're not, like, they're literally, it's an advertising thing. There's going to be a few spots probably on TV during the football season this year that look like this thing saying Grayscale, official crypto sponsor of the New York Giants. You could, it's like, you see all that, like, why do they need a crypto sponsor? Why do they need a official, attire, official shoe company of the whatever? So, I think that this is really just part of that, like, adoption curve. Like, this is where we are blatantly saying, hey, crypto is going to be here to stay. And we're making it okay. We're making it like a regular mainstream thing. You're seeing crypto sold to the mainstream because we're sponsoring things for the masses, football teams, like, it's millions of eyeballs. This is pretty big times. Like, it's all happening. I thought this was kind of funny, though.
Did you see the TSM FTX rebrand? So TSM is like this big e-gaming company. Like, they sponsor, like, a ton of, like, gaming teams. Like, I don't even know all the companies they own. But they added FTX to their name. So now they're TSM FTX. But there was some drama there, and I don't know, maybe Ro knows. But basically, like, the best team and the best brand that, like, they were pretty much, like, paying for like pretty much boycotted the FTX. They said they weren't going to be like adopting the FTX like letters. But I mean, I thought that was a big signal from Sam, like e-gaming is a thing. Cause like everybody's been saying it for a while, but I don't know about you guys, but it just like it hasn't really caught on here in the South.
I mean, e-gaming's been jumping up and blowing up in the ranks for a while now. It kind of has yet to kind of just have that full acceptance. But it's pretty interesting because we do see like in up and coming technologies, up and coming industries, you've got this TikTok generation, you've got crypto Twitter, you've got, gaming, like this gaming, like there's a gaming community. And a lot of these like tech type new things popping up, they all fit within each other. You've got your gaming stuff, which fits really well with crypto stuff, which fits with kind of like that competitive, edge, which is like sports. And so I'm starting to see like this complex that it all kind of helps itself, and esports is a big thing. It's going to be huge. It's much bigger than regular sports already because just the ability to get people into it, I mean, you can plug in from anywhere. People like the big thing for me over the last years, like over the last decade, as I've been watching this, the biggest potential threat to esports was, man, are people going to want to watch other people play video games? Like, come on. Like, are they going to want to watch other people play video games without wanting to pick up a controller themselves? And then over time, you've seen these games that have been reiterated on for years, and you got people becoming like really, really, really good at these games. But then, like, if you really break it down, how many times have you been sitting in a living room and you've got a PS3, PS4, and a couple of buddies, and you got two controllers, and you got to wait your turn, and sometimes when it's done, like they're really good, you're not even that good. So you don't even want to play them. You just sit back, hit the bowl one more time and just, watch, because that's actually fun. It's actually nice to watch people play sports like esports or be good at something. And then you take how it's evolved, Twitch, the streaming aspect of it, to have interactive chats going on. These folks are putting on a show. They're putting on their own curated show. So this is like beyond sports. This is beyond watching your buddy play a game. This is like entertainment in an event that's going on with real people right now. There's so many aspects of it that go from watching a game to a live entertainment event. And I think there's a couple more pieces, enabling audiences to kind of choose your own adventure, and for the people who are putting on the live stream to be more fluid, and for these things to be more like events. And I mean, $500 million was created out of thin air by putting two influential people in a ring on Sunday night. That's the basic concept here of what e-gaming is. And I think it could be absolutely huge. And crypto, is really just another thing that's going to enable all that.
I think Sam is on top of it, but I do think you hit the nail on the head in that it is already a massive thing. I think it's more popular than all sports. But I think the thing that will really put it over the top and really like start actually taking market share from the NFL and the NBA and maybe even soccer, or football, depending on where you're at, will be esports betting. And I think that's going to come to FTX relatively soon. Because once you can start betting on the outcomes, that will drive huge markets.
Yeah, take that. All right, so then you've got speculation markets, right? The crypto side of things, not just buying or supporting or tipping the person or charging for streams, but actually also interacting in that way. These things becoming live events that are happening around the internet, not just happening on traditional pay-per-view or live streams, the Olympics, for example. I mean, just wait until you have a whole society of young people that have grown up and are depending upon being connected to the world through these live streams, the things that will evolve into that. So, and then speculative markets, you add that to the mix. There's a couple more pieces that you could probably connect that just unlock possibilities. So yeah, that's going to be super interesting. Who's gonna really have an issue with esports? Like, what's the threat? What could cause esports not to ever take off at this point?
Teachers.
No. I was gonna say parents.
Well, a lot of these kids are making money, and I've been in an Uber with a couple like proud moms. Their moms, like Ubering or doing whatever for some extra money. And they're talking about their 15-year-old kid who just got a $3,000 check because he's an influencer on YouTube, or he's a gamer on Twitch. And, he's got like a Patreon or whatever.
For every like one or two of those people, there are like 30 to 100 kids who like are trying to do this and will never do it. So I think like it's probably a net detriment to society. But I was never much of a gamer, so I don't know how you can like really. I'm sure there are very valuable skills, and some of my most successful friends are like hardcore gamers. So I'm sure they're very, very valuable skills.
I think that between gamers and traders is probably just a stone's throw of a difference.
That's fair.
For all that, would you say for every one trader that, there's 30 that, and it's probably not a net positive for society or whatever, the same thing can kind of be said there, but, bringing it all back, you have to have a skill set. It's not just about, people will watch me or I'm going to influence, the reason that people end up in those spots that, you're really freaking good at Call of Duty, you're like, people want to watch amazing beyond regular ability stuff, whether it's catching a football, jumping up freaking 6 feet in the air and not worried about just getting pummeled to the ground. People appreciate that. That's art. So if you're really, really good at something, whether it's video games, sports, or whatever, you have to be good. You have to be impressive. It has to be something worth watching. You have to be entertaining to people, and people are entertained in different ways, but I think there's too many people who just want the fame. There's too many people who just want to be in a spotlight, but you don't have anything that you're good at. So I think that just like everything else, it'll shake itself out. Posers get, outed pretty quickly, and people with skills and people who are really onto something get supported. And that's where the money ends up flowing. People have the choice of who they support and things like this. It's not just about, I went to the right school and came up in the right system and I got this contract and I got this opportunity. I've been groomed, for the last number of years as an athlete. It's kind of like, all right, cool. If you're a kid and you want to play a game, get after it. It's kind of if you have a computer system, not all computer systems and internet connections are created equally, but in terms of honing your craft, this is something that's open to a lot more people across the world. 8 billion people. And we all have none of us have kids yet, but we have probably nephews and, we get to hang around young people or your friends' kids or whatever, them. And it's interesting. I got my first cell phone when I was probably 14, 15, 16 or something like that. And I was really young to get it, especially at my time. But now if you're 8 years old, you're probably getting an emergency cell phone from your parents, and you probably have an iPad at home with some limiting, restrictions on it, but like the point is like kids are the new generation is coming up where this is normal. I've seen a 5-year-old kid go through all the settings on an iPad to show somebody how to change it to dark mode, like a 5-year-old. Like they're so in tune with iOS that'll be part of, just their baseline logical understanding forever. So their ability to feel comfortable with systems like that. Whereas if you look at 70-year-olds right now, they're really not trying to get locked into a screen. They don't like it. They'd rather look up and look around and talk to somebody face to face or call somebody on the phone. I'd rather push a couple of buttons. These kids don't want to talk to anybody. They just want the app to work the right way so they can get their things. And so it's all about adoption. I don't know why we're spending so much time on gaming, but I think it's related to crypto. And I think that crypto is going to really unleash a lot of the gaming, esports, live streaming, remote entertainment, whatever this whole thing is. It's coming.
Well, I mean, that just like, it just made me think about all kind of different avenues, right? So it's like, I remember going to Texas to visit my wife's family, and her kids, her cousins going outside with some app, and they all had the app on their phone, and they would just go outside and run around like crazy people. I mean, like, there's no purpose, or they weren't running. They were literally just, it was like they were trying to game the system, and they were going outside trying to get these sweat points up. It was like sweat coin or something like that. And it's like, if they generated enough of them, then they could either like redeem them for a gift card or some like gaming system or Bitcoin or whatever. And it's just like, really what's happening is that person was using their phone for some purpose, like while they're just like running around with the sweat coin app up, and it's like, and they're monetizing that somehow. But like, I mean, with crypto, think about, like, you just have to come up with something catchy enough to grab the youngest person with a phone's attention. And it's like, as long as your app can utilize their processing power to do something else in the back end to make some type of crypto, it could be burst coin, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be Bitcoin, but it's like, that's huge. Like, you could self-finance as an app developer. You just have to build some type of like mining capability in the background of your app that's not going to brick their phone.
Yeah, this has been kicked around a little bit. I mean, take the gig economy of computer hardware. If you've got a house and you're not there, rent it out. That's Airbnb. If you've got a car and you're not needing to go anywhere and you've got free time, drive other people around. That's Uber. We're calling that the gig economy. Apply it to computer hardware. We're all sitting in front of our systems right now, and we're likely going to get up and walk away after this meeting is over, right? At least for a few minutes. There will be an 8-hour period, at least in every day, where we're asleep and not using our computers. So apply that gig economy approach to unused idle computers, just like cars, unused idle residences, unused idle, whatever. How do we tap into that? A lot of people have done this thing where it's like, oh yeah, I'm mining cryptocurrency on my phone. That's proof of work type stuff. How do you tap into idle compute power? There's been rumors of, Elon activating all of his processing power in his cars so that you can mine crypto while your car is charging, not being used. What about your computer setups at home? What about everybody has a cell phone? If you can tap into that globally, at levels which kind of make sense, that's potentially huge. But how do you do that? Like that? Right now it's a free for all. Right now, people would have to choose what they push their processing power to. But what about when Apple or Android just starts baking it in? what about when that becomes not a choice anymore? What about when you get a Facebook phone or put Facebook on your phone? You're agreeing to the terms, which mean that part of your processing power and your idle time goes to mining Facebook coin or whatever it is, or Diem or whatnot. The possibility of hijacking compute power here is a real threat. Hijacking in the sense of taking that option away from users, because we do. There's a lot of trust when we buy a piece of hardware.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, if we are truly moving towards a more decentralized world, consumers are going to have options. And as maybe it will be kind of shady and you won't know initially, but inevitably it's going to come out. So yeah, I think, I tend to try and be an optimist and help the future direction of the world. And I'm sure there's going to be bad actors, but by and large, I think if a major power does that, like Apple or Google, and you don't have the optionality to turn that on and off, then I think consumers are going to have options. They can always just move to somewhere else.
Have you guys heard of Ethereum Max? It was on Floyd Mayweather's hat, and a couple people looked into it. It's an ERC20. Tyler, what do you know?
Oh, I've literally I pulled the tab up to talk about it just in case if we ran out of things to talk about. Like, I had it there just in case we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it. I want to learn.
Oh, I just know that was what Floyd Mayweather came on stage and everybody thought he was wearing an Ethereum shirt, but it was like an Ethereum Max shirt. And he literally came on stage to promote Ethereum Max. And I'm looking at it and I can't, from what I can tell is it's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't understand what it is exactly. It feels like just I think it was explained to me as just kind of like a proof of stake types, coin that was based off of ERC20, which somehow attempted to improve liquidity or some aspect of the Ethereum ecosystem. I have no idea. It just seems like they're copying Tron in a lot of ways.
Well, so for some reason, somehow 1+ billion market caps in the token economics. I don't know how that's like a token economic or tokenomic feature, but yeah, 1+ billion market caps a tokenomic feature.
I did not even know about this. I thought he was talking about Ethereum, so I appreciate the clarification.
And then I love the steps. Step 1, download Coinbase app. Let me share my screen. Am I on the show? Does it say I'm? Whatever. Well, step 1, download the Coinbase app.
There we go.
There we go. It's telling you to buy ETH on Coinbase.
That's it? Okay. Okay, so buy ETH, go to Uniswap, and convert your shit to Emax.
That's so funny, man.
I like how they say at the very end of that, if you scroll back up just a little bit, it says Emax will appear in your CB wallet in less than 1 minute where you can hold.
Don't sell.
You can hold while we rug you. Don't sell, because we need to be able to rug the shit out of you.
Switching gears, if you guys don't mind, to my favorite topic, Zcash.
Yeah, let's do it.
Zcon 2 happened on the 8th and the 9th, which is like their annual, maybe semi-annual conference where they basically tell the world what they've been up to, and it's awesome. And just like to view that in parallel or immediately after the Bitcoin conference was like a sight to behold, because you have all of these larger than life figures at the Bitcoin conference, and it was held virtually this year. ZCon 2 was held virtually this year because of COVID, and like each video had like 120 people join in, and so it's like really, and it's all about like this really nerdy like developers and or like business people, like Zuko was on and all this stuff, but they did just kind of clarify some stuff about the future, and I don't think they're going to move to proof of stake immediately. They're going to definitely wait and see what happens on Ethereum, but I do believe it's definitely in the pipeline, which would be, I think, pretty massive for Zcash as a community. But more importantly, Halo 2 or Halo Arc, I'm sorry, will be releasing in their network upgrade 5, which is going to testnet, I think, the beginning of August, and will be launching on mainnet like fully on October 1st, which I think is a pretty pivotal date for the entire market. And what that does is it removes the trusted setup. So the whole thing about Zcash, there was this pretty radical podcast on, I think, Radiolab, either Radiolab or NPR. And it goes into, they had a reporter at the initial, like the inaugural Genesis block for Zcash. And in order for zero knowledge proofs to work, you have to generate this private key that basically verifies all the transactions in the future, that they are zero knowledge and that they are legit. But if you have that private key, then you can counterfeit all of these transactions, so on and so forth. And so there's this really elaborate plan where it's like multi-parties, each party gets a shard of the private key, and then once like the whole system has been integrated, each party destroys their portion of the private key. So that's gone this entire time, and so now Halo Arc will be released, and it removes the trusted setup, which, on the surface doesn't seem like a big deal. However, what that would allow is for Zcash shielded assets, basically like essentially ZRC20s. So anybody could put their token on the Zcash protocol and have layer 1 privacy built into it. Which completely changes the, I think, use case and utility of Zcash from being a private store of money to a privacy platform where anything can run on it. And I think, kind of coming back to my earlier comments on Bitcoin, this is like part of the reason why I'm like, okay, Bitcoin will never be able to do anything like this, in my opinion. But essentially, if Zcash or somebody else perfects this and it's adopted, privacy is going to be incredibly important in our future. Right now, when you transact at Starbucks, nobody knows how much money you have. Nobody knows like how much money is in Starbucks' account. Like, and if you transact on the Bitcoin blockchain or on the Ethereum blockchain right now, everybody knows all of this information and the time and when it happened and all of your previous transactions. So you can, like, I'm sure it's already been done, but like there's going to be huge, like big data companies that come around and just mine all of that information and use it to market these particular accounts like heavily, and they're going to sell it to third parties. And you know, that's, if it's not being done already, I would be shocked. So like privacy as a layer one protocol that other things like dApps could be built on top of is huge. And so that was awesome. That was really great to see. So October 1st is a huge date in my head. And then secondly, I think decentralization is a really big topic that doesn't get a lot of real discourse around. Like, there's not really a lot of discussion around it. Yeah, everybody knows BSC is not centralized, but I'd say Solana really isn't that centralized, or is very centralized. But I would really say Solana is very centralized as well, just because it hasn't been around. You have primary stakeholders. You know, like, it is somewhat decentralized, but there are definitely it is more decentralized, or it is more centralized than most other currencies, besides Ethereum and Bitcoin. And I think Zcash kind of falls, I would say, in that third regard. I do think it's just because of the price, the way the price has moved, and you know, how long it's been around. You could make an argument that Litecoin's in that same bucket. So I think decentralization is a big thing that goes in favor of the Zcash coin. However, the protocol itself is being developed by two entities, with the potential of a third now. Anyway, the two entities are the Electric Coin Company, obviously, and then the Zcash Foundation. And those two companies are nonprofits that basically fund all of the development. And they take a portion of the mining proceeds. But those are both located in the United States. And so I do see that as like a pretty singular point of failure for Zcash as the protocol right now. I'm sure there's some benefits, but like one of the benefits of, or one of the beautiful things about Ethereum is that there are Ethereum developers from all over the world. You know, Russia, Asia, Canada, the United States. And that's like a really strong global initiative. So that is definitely one thing I would like to see more of is more global involvement. But yeah, that kind of just summarizes some of my thoughts from the videos that I watched this past week on Zcash, my favorite topic.
Yeah,
you guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the concept of a privacy-based currency going in the general direction of things, as we're seeing, to set itself up as a platform, similarly to the Ethereum system, could have a lot of value. And, you know, right now, like if you're looking at Ethereum or like Solana or whatever to kind of like move forward with, to build on top of, you could also consider something like a ZRC20 token, right? Is like that's kind of funny actually, but using Zcash or a anonymous kind of privacy centric platform to build programmable money systems on. I think that that's extremely powerful. I don't see Monero doing that. Maybe I haven't really kept up with that project as much.
So the thing about
I don't see Monero necessarily positioning itself as a platform, kind of like Quora.
So the Monero core team spun off into Tari Labs, like some of the Monero core developers. So Tari's a merged mine, full built platform protocol in Rust for private assets, merged mined with Monero, but it's built in Rust. So it's going to be compatible with like Solana and Polkadot and a lot of other things like from day one. And that's what I was going to say, listen to Ro talk is like, so like Zcash has like an advantage because they're like automatically like they're going to be compatible with Ethereum, right? And so you've got that ecosystem. But I was going to say that their downfall is going to be Rust that they're not building in Rust. But then I actually pulled up an article from 2018 it was a video from a meetup with Solana, Zcash, and Parity, which is the main development behind Polkadot. And the title is Why Rust is Ideal for Blockchain Development. So it seems like Zcash has Rust clients as well, which means that Zcash will be able to interface with Polkadot. And like right now, you can wrap Zcash in Ren and do Ren Zcash and deploy it. But it seems like eventually, like everybody's going to Rust, and everything's going to be able to talk to each other anyway.
Yeah, I think that was definitely. I don't remember if it was part of the sapling network upgrade or if that's going to be part of the future network upgrade. But they were. I did hear some talk about transitioning to Rust and developing that as well. But as far as like Monero is concerned, I think Monero at this point, after watching that conference, I think Monero has in general done a better job of being the preferred privacy token on a number of metrics in terms of, including market cap. So Monero has like taken that number one spot, but I think what it doesn't have is, the regulatory framework to be a standard. Zcash is on Coinbase, it's on Gemini, and Monero is never going to be on either of those two. And given the sheer quantity of money that the United States has, I think that is, as much as we give the United States shit sometimes, it's got a lot of power as well, and a lot of sway. And I think having playing to those rules, at least early on, is very beneficial to Zcash eventually. Maybe not until 5 to 10 years down the road, being potentially the crypto standard.
Oh yeah, that's pretty bold. Damn. Okay.
I mean, it all just depends. Like, I do think, again, Bitcoin nobody's ever going to be talk bad about Bitcoin in the future, because what it did allow would be amazing. Like what it allowed for is incredible. But I don't think you can create this coin that becomes as big as it is, and people not, they have vested interests in this, and they don't want to see things change too quickly, because that's what got them there in the first place. And so you have something like Ethereum come around that completely knocks it off. But I think that part of that is because of the success that it's had. I could see Ethereum going down the same route, potentially. I'm not saying it will, because it's still this amazing community, and with incredible developers, and that's kind of their moat, if you will, in addition to the price performance. But I think there's at a point, the success that you have is it prevents you from going forward and adapting quickly. So I could definitely see that happening for Bitcoin and potentially Ethereum, but we're not even close to that.
Well, it kind of is the way of systems. You jump in to fill a need or open up an opportunity for innovation that an existing system has paved the way for, but they're unable to take that step, whether they're entrenched in that older world and responsible for holding that down, or whether they just kind of determine that they want to hold on to what they have and they would rather not take that leap. That always opens a door for new options, new projects, new companies, new startups, however you want to look at it. But then that cycle tends to continue. So it's not out of the question, Ro, in my mind, that Ethereum could, after having jumped in and being able to innovate on top of a Bitcoin and create its own ecosystem and paving the way, that either the ecosystem needs to evolve and the best thing for Ethereum to do is hold it down, or with a moat and with the development community and certain things, it's like you just don't want to deviate away from that, because it serves that purpose. So that tends to lead to things becoming stagnant, and outdated and slow to change relative to the new entrants, which will always kind of be faster and more innovative because of the way that the previous iterations kind of have called for. So whether it goes all the way to the type of stagnancy that we see with Bitcoin, that's less likely. But becoming an OG and becoming kind of irrelevant, holding it down like an IBM, becoming more of a blue chip, but still reliable, and you appreciate everything about it, what it's created, I could totally see that going on. The interesting part of your little presentation was Zcash as the better Ethereum because it's based on privacy protocols and giving people a choice of what kind of money they transact with, as well as giving developers and applications and businesses the choice of platform for what their product or service that their project serves for is best in tune with, right? For example, we look at the Helium project, and looking at something like this, it's where do you build on top of? If you're talking about decentralized data, I mean, it might be too black and white of an analysis right this second, but build on Ethereum or build on the Zcash system, in terms of what do you make available? What will your customers want? What works well with the utility of data, decentralized democratic data? There may be some projects that would naturally be attracted to a platform like that. So super eye-opening for me. I appreciate you bringing that up. I don't know about New World Protocol, but definitely this is the space. This is the cool thing. It's like, if you can build an idea, if you can build a prototype, then, give it a shot. Let's throw it out in the world and kind of see what happens. So yeah, we'll wind this down here pretty soon, but Ro, you want to talk about this real quick? We got you on mute, I think.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a hype cycle graph from Gartner on what they expect to happen, and these little dots are color coded depending on the time frame that they think will happen. And it is pretty interesting because I think at this point, with the world considering crypto as a new asset class, you kind of have to start this whole thing over. I think you kind of entered into a completely new market cycle. And so I think you see this like smart contract oracle and zero knowledge proofs. These are all necessary innovations before we come to this like peak inflated expectations. And so yeah, it's just this really interesting, just like what they're looking at. One thing, they like nailed the 2016, 2017 top two. So I do give this a little bit more weight than most. But the time frame on all of these things is between 2 to 10 years. We're already starting to see a lot of this. Blockchain asset tokenization. Synthetics are definitely a big thing. I don't know about post-quantum blockchain. It seems like we're still relatively far off from that. You have decentralized web services, Akash network is probably the biggest player in that space, but according to them, to Gartner, it'll take about 10 years before that really becomes a thing. But all of this to say, once these things are accomplished, in this relatively like 5 to 10 year time frame, we could see a huge top, like a 1929 sort of top, and like coming back to like that would be the depression of our era, because yeah, like there's not going to be this institution or government that comes in to save us this time. So yeah, it's just a really interesting graphic that I figured I'd put up on here. Do you guys have any questions and thoughts?
Very cool. Bringing it full circle back to us needing a leader to save ourselves, or being able to kind of.
This is when Satoshi returns.
Satoshi is, dude. If Satoshi returns as like a Shiba Inu, I'm gonna lose my shit. All right, I think we're pretty good on time. We should probably wrap this up. Fun call. Appreciate all the input.
Yeah.
Learned a few new things, and yeah, pretty excited about what's going on all around the world. You know, these are our crypto dreams coming true. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, great call. Enjoyed it. Cool little new platform. Seemed like it worked well for us. We'll evaluate, try to make some improvements, and kind of take feedback and everything like that. But I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, we'll circle back around. See you guys next week.
Peace.
Yes.